Good evening. Welcome to the Clackamas County Equity Coalition Fall Quarterly Meeting, Equity in Clackamas County Today and Tomorrow. My name is Bruce Poinsett. I'm with Respond to Racism in Lake Oswego, which is part of the CCEC. We're a group of, a coalition of different groups around the county who really care deeply about this equity work, and we put on events, including these quarterly meetings, to help educate people and help push equity forward. To that end, we have a great panel tonight, and we'll introduce our panelists and our guest moderators in a minute, but I wanted to share something to kind of get us thinking as we go into this. So throughout this evening, there's going to be a couple questions using a phrase that people might not be readily familiar with. It's strategically undervalued. So I wanted to, just share a little something. It's usually weird to be like, hey, I saw this thing on social media, but it's sourced here at Farmer Rishi. You can find it for yourself. But let me just share this thought with you. I tried a new phrase in the meeting today. Instead of underserved, underprivileged, historically marginalized, try strategically undervalued. I like it because it emphasizes the purposefulness of racism rather than historically, which gives a kind of happenstance energy, and uplifts the community by emphasizing the value of the community rather than emphasizing the marginalization. So again, you might hear that term, strategically undervalued communities, tonight. It may sound unfamiliar, it may be a transition, but part of this work we do as the CCEC is to try and push these conversations forward, push how we think forward, and continuously evolve and adapt. So with that, I'd like to welcome our guest moderators this evening, Chase Merrill and Aria Chow, who are both students with the Youth Empowerment Coalition. Would you please welcome our guest moderators?
Hello, my name is Chase Merrill.
And my name is Aria Chow, and we are leaders of the Youth Empowerment Coalition, a youth-led group of empowered high school students inspired to disrupt racism within the Lake Oswego community.
By learning about our identities, gaining context through research, and proactive advocacy regarding various social justice issues, the YEC aspires to foster a more just and equitable community. Our first panelist today that we'd like to invite up is Bridget Daisy. Since joining Clackamas Workforce Partnership in 2008 and assuming the role of Executive Director in 2014, Bridget's focus has been on removing barriers to employment for all, improving workforce services, and building sector strategies, equity, and community engagement. Bridget receives a Master's of Social Work from St. Ambrose University, as well as a Bachelor's of Social Work from Loras College. And Bridget's background in social services, her previous experience in education, criminal justice, substance abuse prevention, and advocacy informs her approach to workforce development. She believes individuals and businesses are best served when people and institutions work collaboratively across systems and sectors to address the critical issues impacting employees, people, and communities. As the executive director of CWP, Bridget supports the board of directors, staff, and partners in fully recognizing the role of coordination at a systems level towards a shared goal of prosperity across Clackamas County.
Our next panelist is Anessa Hartman. Anessa Hartman is a devoted mother of two, community development director, and experienced state representative who has been a passionate voice in the state legislature during her first 2 years. Anessa fights to make life easier for working families by lowering costs, improving public safety, expanding child care access, and advocating for victims' rights. Her work reflects a deep commitment to centering community voices, honoring her Indigenous heritage, and ensuring a balanced, healthy future for all Oregonians.
Our next panelist is Larry Didway. Larry Didway joined Clackamas Education Service District as a superintendent in July 2021 after spending the previous 10 years as a superintendent of Oregon City's school district. His more than 35 years as an educator includes experience as an elementary and middle school classroom teacher, principal, and district administrator in Oregon, as well as 3 years teaching in Japan with the Japan Exchange Teaching Program. He holds a BA in political science from Willamette University, a BS and MS in education from Western Oregon University, as well as administrative licensure through the Education Leadership Program at Portland State University. He serves on the board of numerous local and state organizations and service clubs and is a regular presenter at professional conferences. Larry was born and raised in Clackamas County and now resides in Oregon City with his wife Chris and their beloved husky. They have 2 adult children.
Our next panelist is Brandy Johnson. Brandy Johnson is an executive community advocate, trained mediator, and longtime resident of Oregon City. Prior to her move into human services, Brandy spent 14 years as a legal assistant in a local civic law practice before becoming the executive director of Love One in 2019 and of The Father's Heart in 2023. Brandy has dedicated herself to building relationships within the community and cultivating trust with the vulnerable population served by Love One and The Father's Heart. Brandy has a degree in communication with a focus on advocacy and relational communication from Marylhurst University. She also holds a certification in conflict resolution and serves as a board member of the Homeless Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County.
Our next panelist is Vern Chambers. Virginia Vern Chambers is the Director of Health Sciences at Clackamas Community College, where she directs and supervises nursing assistants, medical assistants, dental assistants, medical billing and coding programs, phlebotomy, and EMT personnel. She also supports institutional decision-making and collaborates to envision, design, implement, assess, and continuously improve operational processes for the college. Her personal mission is to be honest, genuine, and experience the world as an opportunity to learn, connect, and grow. And her core values include curiosity, gratitude, inclusion, learning, connecting, and belonging.
Our final panelist is Libra Ford. As a former elite athlete and business owner, Libra Ford is a dynamic leader who champions high-performance personnel and professional behavior. Libra serves as the executive director of the Women's Foundation of Oregon. She has also held key leadership roles, including interim executive director of the Western State Center and chief operating officer for Self-Enhancement, Inc. Libra's impact extends to the executive sector, where she led the North Clackamas School District to become the first in Oregon to name a high school after a person of color. As an executive member and chair of the North Clackamas School Board, she plays a pivotal role during the pandemic. Her current volunteer work includes serving the executive board of the Maurice Lucas Foundation, Oregon State Commission for Women, and the Oregon State Board of Education. Libra is also a proud member of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc. A devoted solo parent to 3 children, Libra calls her children her superpowers, inspiring her drive and success.
Thank you so much, panelists, for being here today. Our first question is, can you please briefly introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about what you do and how your work connects to Clackamas County?
There we go. Good evening. My name is Bridget Daisy, she, her, they. I'm the Executive Director of Clackamas Workforce Partnership. Clackamas Workforce Partnership is a local nonprofit workforce development board that serves Clackamas County. And our middle name is People. Workforce is another way to say people, and it really is intrinsic to our mission and vision of our organization. We invest local, state, and federal funds in employment, training, and education services in Clackamas County. We also oversee a consortium of partners within the system that deliver services at low or no cost to both employers and workers in the Clackamas area. Our system stands at the nexus of all other systems, social service and economic development, and really works to unite all of many different funding streams, programs, and services, and brings partners together from government, public services, employment or business, our business community, trade and labor, social services, and education institutions, and brings them together to create a system and a community that works for all. And I don't know if I answered. Yeah. Are we all doing that?
Aloha, everyone. Libra Ford, as the Executive Director for Women's Foundation of Oregon, we focus on three things. Research. We do the only research on women and girls for the state of Oregon. We produced the first research project in 2017, and currently are working on an updated project. It informs most policy in the state of Oregon. We also do policy advocacy, where we educate women that are our members on how to understand policy and legislation. Because unfortunately, it is very cryptic, and many people are intimidated by it. So we pride ourselves on educating them from the ground level, and we ask them to tell 3 people how to do it. The last thing that we do is we do grant making. So we're philanthropic. We've been around since 1887. I'm sure in 1887, the women that founded it did not think Libra Ford would be the leader. But everything changes. They owned a hotel in Portland called the Martha Washington Hotel, sold it in the 1930s, and that's where our assets come from. So we provide grants to women and girl programs across the state. And I am excited because when I came on board, we've created a system that has reduced barriers and made sure that folks can get to the money without begging.
Good evening, I am Larry Didway, and I use he, him pronouns, and I am very pleased to be the superintendent for Clackamas ESD, Education Service District. And our middle name is Service. We serve primarily 10 public school districts in Clackamas County, and we do that in a number of ways, mostly in the areas of technology, teaching and learning, and professional development, early learning, and administrative services. But we also convene a lot of leaders through our agency, and we provide a lot of direct support to students in programs, especially in early learning and students with very severe and complex needs. We do that, and we like to think of ourselves as a very nimble organization that can help fill the gaps between systems. And if you don't know, Clackamas County has 10 school districts that are incredibly different from one another, serving very different populations, and they all have very different needs. And we try to help make sure that each of them are providing an equitable opportunity for every child to thrive.
Good evening, Brandy Johnson. So Love One and Father's Heart also has a theme, love and heart. We show up and meet people right where they're at and just build relationships. We do that through Father's Heart has a day center. It's the only shelter in Clackamas County open Monday through Friday. We're open 9 to 2. It's a safe space for folks who are housed, unhoused, unstably housed, wherever they're at. Folks that we've recently housed come back for services because it's such a place of community. We provide 3 meals a day, 2 breakfast, top meal for lunch, and then a meal to go for the evening time. We have a clothes closet. We do showers. We have folks come and volunteer their time to do haircuts and foot care. We have a doctor on site once a week, a nurse who provides wound care. And just anything else that we determine when we see the need, we try to meet it. The other portion of Father's Heart is we run a transitional housing program to contracted hotel sites. So 55 hotel rooms where we have folks that we bring in, we help them stabilize and meet whatever basic needs they have while we're working on the path toward whatever their next steps are. That could look like independent living, that could look like group homes, that could look any myriad of things, reconnecting with family. And then we also operate as inclement weather shelter for Clackamas County. In this past winter and summer, we were the only entity providing that service, and our overnight capacity is 49, and I will tell you that there are more than 49 vulnerable individuals who need shelter in this county. Love One provides laundry, showers, hygiene. We do pop-up events throughout the county. We currently have 15 events every month. We're in Milwaukee, Oregon City, unincorporated Milwaukee, Gladstone area, Sandy, Molalla, and Estacada. We work to build relationships with folks who don't otherwise have access to some of the same things that many others do in their homes. And we build those relationships in laundromats and parking lots. We also have an outreach team that goes out and meets people right where they're at, wherever that is, on the sidewalk, in Newell Creek Canyon, wherever we get the referrals from community members, from leaders, from law enforcement. Our teams are all over throughout the county. And then we also run a trash program. We call them trash extravaganzas, because we needed people to sign up, and people won't sign up for trash events. But if you call something an extravaganza, people are like, oh, what is that? I'm gonna check it out. And we pay people with lived experience to help. So when there are problematic areas in the county, we often get called and we arrange for partnerships. We work closely with Metro and Solve, and we go out and do a trash extravaganza and help folks identify what they're ready to get rid of, and clean up those areas. We don't clear camps. We just provide trash service, and we pay them for their time, as well as our team working. And then we work with those folks. We stay with them, and we work on next steps with them as well. And the other piece is a rural food pantry out in Redland. We serve over 400 mostly unstably housed individuals in a food desert. That's anywhere from 7,000 to 10,000 pounds of food every single Thursday, and that is gone in 15 minutes. And that is done without any contractual funding. That is done through cobbling together creativity and partnerships with Oregon Food Bank and farmers and Clackamas Service Center. And folks show up. Sometimes farmers come with all of their eggs to donate. Sometimes we get fresh tomatoes from the garden, and whatever we're able to pull together. So that's a little bit about what we do.
A little bit about what you do. Yeah, it's really hard to follow. So my name is Virginia. I go by Vern. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Health Sciences at Clackamas Community College. Yes, whoop, whoop, Clackamas. We have community in our middle name when it comes to what we do. And I'm actually, health science is a very interesting department at the college. It's a little bit unique. It's actually an expensive department to run. It has very unique faculty when it comes to specialized disciplines. So everything from nursing to phlebotomy, everybody needs to have some sort of specialized training in order to do their job. And there's lots of regulatory compliance, lots and lots of regulatory compliance. When I think about what health sciences as the department does for the community, we have 7 different programs. Of those 7 programs, 6 of them have clinical experiences. So it requires students that are going through our programs to go out into the community and serve our community, right? So whether it's nursing that's going into the hospitals and some of our long-term care facilities and providing services and doing their clinical hours, or it's phlebotomy, going out and drawing blood all day long. We've got medical assistants that are giving injections. But when we look at how many hours, it's 1,700 hours. I just added it up. 1,700 hours a year per program. That's not per student, right? So if we just, all of the different hours, adding them up, that's how much we actually give out into the community. So those are unpaid clinical experience hours. So when it comes to community, we do quite a bit with our middle name as community, not just with the clinical experiences and actually training the next generation of healthcare workers and healthcare professionals are going out into the field, but we also partner with high schools quite a bit too. And one of the things that we're looking at right now is we actually have a new CTE consortium of rural high schools. So we have 4 different high schools in the rural communities: Estacada, Canby, Malala, and Colton. Thank you. You know. Yes. Brilliant people up here on stage. And we're actually, instead of having them try to create in the rural communities, health science doesn't exist, right? It's an expensive program, CTE-wise, to run out into the high schools. And so we're partnering with those high schools to develop a course that's an intro to health science course that can be taught at the high schools, but it's actually constructed and put together by us, and then there's a direct connection to our health science programs. And so we're trying to do as much as we can. We partner with the Clackamas Free Clinic when it comes to our students doing some of their hours out there and volunteering. Yeah, so that's yeah, it's education and stuff, yes. What? Oh, and dental? Oh yeah, we do the free yes. So we do have a dental assisting program. Thank you, Casey. And what we started doing, and we're hopefully going to be doing this every 6 months. We had a really good, successful dental cleaning clinic that we did for the Clackamas Free Clinic's patients. So our dental assisting students and a dental hygiene program at Mount Hood Community College, we collaborate quite a bit with them. And our actual dental assisting facility and lab is actually a clinic. So it's a fully functioning, we can take x-rays, we can do all the things and the stuff, and it's actually quite cool. So that is another thing, so yeah. Oh yeah, you have a microphone. I know, I've heard it all the time.
Hi, everyone. I'll be honest, I'm sitting here thinking like my middle name's not that cool. But my middle name is Day, so I came up with like, I get to represent you all day long. So that was like, okay. I don't usually tell people my middle name, but there you go. We're all close now. So I wear many hats. First and foremost, I'm a mom. I do all of the work that I do for them. I have a 10 and an almost 13-year-old. Pray for me. I am the state representative for House District 40, which is Gladstone, Oregon City, parts of North unincorporated Clackamas County. I get the privilege of being the 3rd Indigenous person to be a state representative in the history of the state. Thank you. And the other job that I have, the one that actually pays my bills, is another hat that I wear, but I work for the Native American Youth and Family Center as their community wealth building manager. I oversee our individual development accounts, which IDAs, if those of you are familiar, are pathways to home ownership and home ownership education, home repair, and our financial wellness work, which is really all about building financial wealth amongst Native community, low-income, BIPOC communities in and around Multnomah County. I said earlier to someone, we're very well connected in Multnomah County, but we need to work on that here in Clackamas. NAYA has done a really wonderful job of slowly but surely coming into Clackamas, most recently opening up Auntie's Place in Milwaukee, which we're so very excited about, and it's just a really beautiful space. If you haven't had a chance to see it, please do. But as a state representative, I've just finished my first term. I guess it's not finished yet. And it has been an eye-opener. I started this work not really knowing exactly the pathways I'm going to work on. I wanted to come in open-minded and really let my community speak to me, let my own lived experience speak to me. So what I wanted to work on, there are some things that I continue to work on that I wanted to start with, but I have learned a lot. You learn every single day. It's like being in college. You learn every day, and those that are really great at it take that learning, and then how do we translate that into policy that works for everybody? As Libra said, it is cryptic, it is messy sometimes, and it's not always very clear. And so I'll take this quick moment just to give a hats off to my Chief of Staff, Daniel, sitting up here, because without my Chief of Staff or our staff, the world doesn't go around. It doesn't work. And so any legislator that doesn't thank their staff is silly, is the best word that I can say. But for the most part, the work that I have fallen into is really around making sure people have safe, healthy drinking water, making sure cost of living stays to a place that people like those of us who live paycheck to paycheck can still survive. And then as a survivor of sexual assault, I do a lot of domestic violence and sexual assault work. You would be amazed at how far behind the state of Oregon is when it comes to supporting survivors. And we have a lot more work to do in that realm, and I have every intention of doing that. And then in addition to focusing on housing, and not building housing, but stabilizing the housing we already own, and helping people with down payment assistance. Because I don't know about many people in this room, but I cannot afford a down payment in this climate right now. And so we help people who are 80% below AMI to provide assistance for that down payment assistance. The hope for the next session is that we increase that. Because 80% AMI, even if we provide down payment assistance, because believe it or not, the state gives you a cap on what you can help people with, we want to increase that so people actually can afford a home, whether it's in Clackamas, Washington, or Multnomah County. So we'll be really working on access to that intergenerational wealth and making sure that we are there to serve people and listen to people. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, everyone. Our next question is, what value do you think diversity, equity, and inclusion bring to each of your different areas? What are some of the ways you have found to break down barriers so we hear from strategically undervalued groups such as BIPOC, parents of young children, LGBTQIA+, low-income citizens, and disabled individuals that engage with your different areas? What's next for infusing equity into government support, healthcare, education, employment, and economics?
Okay, that's a short question. So, I think I want to begin my answer with just stating my belief about what the purpose of public education is. And I think the whole point, the purpose of education, or public education in particular, is to make sure that we are providing the opportunity and the support for every single child to reach their full potential and thrive. So if we think of that as being our purpose, then it naturally means that diversity, equity, and inclusion is all about how do we make sure that happens. We have to know who we're serving in order for that to happen. In Clackamas ESD, we have a number of ways that have been successful in helping to move that dial. And I think I would begin with just our work to help and support teachers, administrators, school districts, and our whole system at being able to look really carefully at who's in front of them. And we do that in a number of ways. We have a great data analyst and a great data system. We have a group that works with individual teams from schools to help look at what are the outcomes of their work, whether that has to do with academic achievement or attendance or behavior. When are we finding that a student's demographics, whether that be race, gender, identity, zip code, when are the demographics dictating what those outcomes are going to be? And when we find that, what are we going to do about that? We do that through surveys, we do that through focus groups, we try to raise voice of students through a number of different initiatives, and we do that both overall, the 10 school districts, and in individual schools and in individual districts. We also know that it's what the power is of having adults in the system that reflect the student population that they're serving, and we know that we're far from that today. So one of our other strategies is really about workforce development, and in particular, recruiting internally the folks that are working with us already and making sure that they have a pathway and support to get to that licensure place where they can be in a classroom working with students and being a model for student populations that are not currently represented in our staffing ratios today. Another thing that we are being successful at is one of the services we provide is with early intervention, early childhood special education, and early learning in general, and really paying attention to who gets that service. In Clackamas County, I find it just remarkable, and I'm glad you were on this panel too, because we have such a dearth of presence, of official presence of our Native American population in Clackamas County. We just have not been able to develop the kind of relationships to elevate that presence, and we are doing that now with our Clackamas Early Learning Center that we just opened actually this week. First day of classes on Monday, yay. Yeah, brand new center, a converted medical clinic, and we've got partnerships with some culturally specific organizations that we have not had the fortune to bring into Clackamas before. And so those are some of the ways that we are trying to address and bring diversity, equity, and inclusion into Clackamas County schools.
Are we all? Is it okay if we
Yeah, of course.
chime in? Okay, is this on? It is on, okay, great. So it's interesting, so this question speaks to me quite a bit because when I think about healthcare and healthcare workers, individuals that are actually taking care of other people, I mean, that's part of health sciences. We teach people how to take care of other people, right, within the community, and whether it's in a vulnerable space, like a phlebotomist invading your space and stabbing you with a sharp object and taking your blood. I mean, that really is kind of, that's overdoing it a little bit, but that is a description of what a phlebotomist does. It's just that we need to make sure that they're, doing it nicely. Or it's a nurse that's actually in the hospital. But there's these different spaces that we teach people how to, operate, behave, interact with other individuals. And so when I think about health sciences, it's such a critical space for the learning aspect. If we're going to diversify the workforce, we need to make sure that we can get individuals through the application and admissions process to get into competitive programs and decrease those barriers. At the same time, they can come into the programs, but then the curriculum. We think about the curriculum and how we need to make sure that we're reviewing and keeping that as up to date as possible, right, when it comes to the curriculum, and how we're using our different partnerships and looking at the textbooks. I'm sorry, but some of the textbooks out there are not necessarily culturally responsive. And when we're thinking about teaching people how to take care of other people, medical education has not historically done the best job when it comes to this. So there's these different pieces that I think about. There's things that we're currently doing pretty well right now that we've been tackling the last couple years, getting rid of those barriers for the application process and making things more accessible. We don't have application fees anymore. We removed all the application fees. We changed the process to where there's no shadowing. I'll just say, when we started out, and Casey knows this because I worked directly with her when I first started at CCC, there was an application fee for every application. They were all paper-based application. The nursing application was 17 pages long, by the way. You had to get all your transcripts official in an envelope, and you had to mail it in or hand drop it to the facility. So you think about all these different barriers. Then there was programs that required a shadowing experience before you could apply. Who has the social capital to do that in the first place, right? So we think about these different barriers that are put in place that might not have been intentionally, putting things, not intentional, right? But they are in a way, right? So, we did a lot of work and we're doing really good work there. What we still need to do is making sure that we can hire diverse faculty and faculty that are bilingual and faculty that represent our student population that we're trying to serve as well, because we're not doing that great of a job. So I have things in my to-do list that I know that we're not doing a great job at, and how we're going to be going around that process and making sure that we're including a lot of people as we go through those discussions. But there are some things that, we are kind of doing a little bit when it comes to identifying those barriers and trying to take things away. But it's hard. Humans taking care of other humans and invading those spaces, we need to make sure those people are equipped with those skills and knowledge and understanding when it comes to that. So I get really, so, all right, sorry, thank you. No? Sorry. Oh, is it not working? Oh, sorry.
Thank you, panelists, for your responses.
I'm sorry.
You first.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. So I actually took notes, and I'm gonna diverge from notes. Nancy, I'm assuming you brought me here knowing who I am, right? Okay. I will first answer the question, and then I'm going to rattle the room. And I want you guys to just know that, because I'm rattled inside. And so I want to be clear on why I'm doing it. First and foremost, why is diversity, equity, inclusion important in the area that I'm in? I mean, we service over 50% of this state. And so, unfortunately, women are often undervalued and strategically undervalued. And if you add any race or identity to that, you triple it. I want to say something to this space because I think it's important that we come here to grow. And I appreciate sitting on this panel with everyone. I also just want to point out some things. It is a privilege to have a list of things to do. It is a privilege to know that a space is uncomfortable and work towards making that space comfortable. It is a privilege to know that presence is needed of a particular group, but not know what to do. That's a privilege. When you are the group, it is hell. So I just want to say to this room, we can answer these questions with a whole lot of rhetoric, or we could get real. The reality is that diversity, equity, and inclusion is important because no matter what you are, you're different. Now, some differences are accepted more than others. The question is, how do we accept all differences? All of them. And be okay in our space and know that there's enough room for all of us. And when we find difference and we're in charge, how do we disturb the room? Not sit there and create checklists and wait for the stuff to come, but disturb the space. I'm gonna tell y'all, I know I disturb the space. I make many people uncomfortable. I don't care. Because some of the biggest people on this planet have made things uncomfortable. If you just are gonna create a checklist, please get out the way. We need to do things. And doing things requires you to stand up and say things that might make you less acceptable in the space. You may have to curse a little bit. You may have to say things out of line. Just don't fall into it, y'all. It's easy. I'm telling you, I struggle with it all the time. It's easy to fall into the rhetoric. Use all these terms. Use them, right? Use them well. Everyone's like, yeah. You walk out, everyone does nothing. Stop it. Start deciding how you will be a part of the change. And if you are in a seat of leadership, you can change something today. You can. And I think that's why we're here. We're here to shake it up. I get it. It's easy to use the terms. The terms suck. The terms allow us to hide. That's what all this is. So I'm rattled. I love you guys. I love being here, but I'm rattled. Because I'm not going to sit here and just say a bunch of terms to y'all. I'm going to tell y'all, get up and move. It's time for us to do something.
I'm absolutely not following you.
Building off of our last thought here, our next question is going to be, what do the current barriers to change look like for each of your areas, and what work would help reduce those barriers? Besides voting, what ways can community help raise equity as an issue to be addressed in our community? What can community groups do to support DEI efforts and reduce barriers in your different organizations now that there is no general county level office to work with on those efforts?
I'm the one that's supposed to follow that up. Notice she said besides voting. And now Libra's got me spitting. I'm not going to say the same thing I want to say now. But I mean, she is absolutely right.
How do we disturb the space? I'm going to think about that every time I wake up in the morning. And I'm going to ramble now a little bit. Being truthfully honest with everyone here, I have to walk in two worlds every single day. If you were not aware, House District 40 is the swingiest, most contested seat in the state. That's out of 60 other seats. I have what's called a purple district. I mean, it is purple. And I do feel a responsibility to listen to everyone. A part of my tribe's story is about Hiawatha and the Peacemaker. We were originally 5 nations. It was 5 nations of Iroquois. Iroquois is the French given name. Haudenosaunee is our language name. And at once we were all at war with each other, fighting each other for some no one even knew at the time. And the Peacemaker came, and he spoke through Hiawatha, who was one of the members who hated the Mohawks, who were at war with everyone. And that's because Mohawks killed his family. And it was through him that they went to every single tribe to gain peace and understanding. And upon the last tribe, which was the Mohawks, they found their chief, depends on which tribe you're talking to, but what I was taught was, they found him sort of engulfed in snakes, just a hatred, angry man. And it was through caretaking and love and taking care of this chief, and slowly the snakes left, and they fed him, and they housed him, and they showed him love again, that the anger and hate left. And so everyone agreed to throw their weapons in the ground, and that's where the Tree of Peace came from. The Tree of Peace rose up, and the Peacemaker is the eagle at the top of the tree. So if you're familiar, the United States stole something, shocker. There's the eagle at the top of this tree. And then it'll show, 4 squares, which represented the other 4 tribes. And I say that to you all to share that part of our, histories and our stories, because that's where they came up with the Great Law of Peace, which influenced the United States of America's Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and our 3 forms of government. Mohawks being the executive branch, the bigger brothers being 2 others, and the little brothers, which were the House, included my tribe, which is Cayuga. So it's kind of a little weird, like a full circle emotional moment. Oh, I did it, I didn't cry. But I say that because that's the lens that I have learned to settle with, that I can't be an activist in the Capitol. Sometimes. I have to meet people where they're at just to gain an inch, and then I can, gain some trust. And that has been really hard for me to accept, because I know that if I said what I want to say, and Daniel gets to hear it, Casey gets to hear it sometimes, I wouldn't be able to be there and make 1 inch or pave a little bit more or pave a mile so that the next me or another me while I'm there gets to be wholeheartedly themselves. And that has been hard, because I've had to feel like I'm balancing my values, but I know progress is being made. And so I'm not one to be in like something for a long con. I'm more of a quick, I don't have patience. But I have learned to settle in this role where I'm the paver instead of a big change maker. And I know some people will argue that maybe I'm a part of the change, and I know that. But it's been an interesting road being a Native woman in a really purple district, balancing a system that was not made for me. It was not made for me at all. Purposefully, strategically not made for me. And so it's been a challenge. It's really been a challenge for me, a lot of like self-reflection, a lot of patience, and a lot of uplifting those that can be wholeheartedly themselves and still trying to insert those voices. And the biggest example that I have, and I share with so many people, in my first session as a freshman, and if you don't know, freshmen don't get a lot done. They don't, but I do. We do. I ran a bill that was housing for all. My Unite folks know over here, which basically requires the state of Oregon to offer services to those without documentation status during states of emergency. Red Cross and FEMA does not. So when we had the fires, Kate Brown, and then Governor Brown, offered emergency services, but she had to call a state of emergency to allow us to help people, to help humans. We wanted to put that in statute, that it would always happen that way. I think everyone in this room knows that Republicans don't touch anything that has to do with immigrants, right? But through conversation, through several conversations and private meetings, and a lot of biting my tongue, to be quite honest, and a lot of painful moments, right? Like leaving meetings and I literally felt like I wanted to throw up. Like, I cannot believe I have to share space with these people, and I cannot believe that these people represent people. Like, I cannot believe that. In the end, long story short, we had 5 Republicans sponsor the bill and vote for that bill. And it was it was a tiny thing. It feels tiny, but when I, like, thinking about our first conversations with these 5 people and the way that they just talked about human beings, and to see them shift a little bit, I'm like, okay, this is my role. Like, this is my role. And so it's been challenging. It's been really challenging to, like, digest this and figure out my place in this world and in the political world. And I think, outside of that, and I'm sorry I rambled, I don't think I answered the question very well, but I think outside of that is getting community to understand we all play a piece in this change. And this isn't a hostile takeover, that this is a silent and slow, unfortunately, moving target. And I get to play a role on this side of the spectrum, and then everybody else gets to play a role on the other spectrum and be who they want to be. And I think I have found that hard to receive from folks, is that I'm not disturbing as much as I could, and that has been hard to translate, right? Like, I'm being serious. Like, 5 years ago, I only voted for the president. I didn't vote down ballot. I was someone who didn't think my vote mattered, because that guy's always gonna win. The last time a woman represented my district was the year I was born in 1988. As I said, like, we don't have the representation we deserve, and I will close out by saying, like, Representative Tana Sanchez has stated very clearly that this is the first time in this state's history that we have 11, technically 13, but the other 2 are Republicans and they don't like to talk with us. 11 individuals who identify as Black, Indigenous, Vietnamese, Asian, people of color. And that is the most the state has ever seen in this history. And Tana Sanchez is in one of the most powerful seats in this state as the co-chair of Ways and Means, the people that handle the money. And so we are, and she said, 10 years ago, this wasn't the case at all. We had 1 person. And so we are in this phase where we are seeing change, and we're slowly making it happen. We're doing that. And I just think I wish there was a way that I could bring community along to know that maybe it feels like we're moving a little bit slower than expected, but that there's a plan. And I get there's lack of trust. I got it, lack of trust in government. Believe me, I'm there. But I think that has been the challenge. And I wish that we could figure out a way that we're all moving in the right direction. Some of us are just doing it a little differently and at a different pace. So, there.
No, I'm gonna add to, well, first of all, appreciating the fact that, making a checklist or just having a list is really, it's something to do, but it's not gonna, it's not gonna make change, right? And so there's these actionable items that need to happen, and there's people that are in a leadership position that can have influence and power over what that change might look like. And it's interesting, like, in a position, so for myself, being the Director of Health Sciences, I have an influential piece or a place that I can play that role when it comes to support and influence. And it's interesting, I've been at Clackamas Community College for 3 years. I'll be going on my 4th year this year. And the amount of change we've made has been great, and at the level and degree of so many faculty leaving. And I think that that's a big challenge. When we see mass exodus, then there's something happening. And that was disruptive. And there were a lot of disruptive things that took place in the last couple of years to try to make that change take place. And it's not always nice, and it's not always happy. I will say that there's regulatory things that we always have to look at, and when we think about a community college and public service and teaching, we have unions, we have contracts, we have things that we sit in spaces where we listen to people say things that are no, and you can push back on that, and you can have those conversations with folks, but unless they decide to leave on their own accord, it makes it really hard. But there's definitely ways that we can do it and go about trying to make those changes to support everybody and to listen to everybody. But I tell you, you said it is a privilege to sit here and say, you know what, we got more to do, and there's these different lists and what that looks like, and it doesn't feel good. And I don't, yeah, so I'm public, yes. It makes me want to go into the private sector a little bit, but service, that's where I'm about.
So I sit in the philanthropic field, which is rooted in lots of horrible, harmful practices. And most philanthropic organizations, some of the big ones that you all know, give about 5% of their funds. That's what they're required to give by the IRS. And they'll sit in spaces and they discuss the need. My office is on 2nd Avenue, on the corner of where Darcel's is. So I'm walking past bodies every day. And we'll have meetings with other foundations and organizations who have trillions, T, in their accounts. Readily available, there is no bureaucracy at all. And they will sit and have awful discussions about humans and decide not to give money, not to help fix the dollars, the issues. So when I think about this crushing current barriers in the philanthropic world, the barriers are old, systemic, charitable, giving harm that needs to be disrupted. And with Women's Foundation of Oregon, when I show up, I'm very clear that they're not doing enough. And I'm very clear on what I feel they need to do. Instead of giving $1 million and having the Oregonian write about it, and you have like thousands of more zeros in your account, and you're stepping over bodies, do more. Do more. And so for us strategically, we've created an application process that has 5 questions. Most philanthropic applications are pages, and they ask for your blood. Our 5 questions, 2 of the 5 are what's your name and what's your contact. The other 3 are based on you dreaming about a future that you want to see. And then we sit and we talk to you about that future because we care and we want to see that happen. And then after we award someone, I go to those same meetings with those dreams and I read them verbatim to them so they can hear it. And many times in those spaces, even though folks are very much stuck on their ways, and by the way, most of them feel they're pretty liberal. Libra, I voted for okay. At the same time, I often say you are only as liberal as you're tested. So if there's, in this room, there are 4 black people. 4. You can't tell me that this is diverse. This does not represent our county. And that's the stuff I'm saying we got to call out. I don't think it's hard. I think that we're conditioned to not say it. This does not represent our county. And that's the catastrophe. So what could we do? Next time, invite 2 friends. It's that easy, y'all. I'm not asking you to turn over the building. It's about not just thinking about yourself. The same way I tell the philanthropist, this is not about you. You're going home to your $400,000 car and then your $10 million home. And you're saying, oh my God, the tents are just, oh my God, calm down. Calm down. You need to understand that as a human, we get to care for each other. We should. And the way that I love is calling you out. And in this room, the next time you come here, I'm calling you out. Bring 2 people. And make sure that one of those people don't look like you. It's that easy. And have them listen. They can take it however they want. They can, translate it, maybe do nothing with it. Doesn't matter. But having them in the space changes the dynamic, one person at a time.
I would just say that the barriers that we're facing in our communities and economies, we have a lack of quality jobs. We have a lot of people who are working hard. And we have a lot of people who have been undervalued strategically in their work. And so I think we need to promote and advocate for better pay, better benefits, more flexibility, social support, culture, people feeling safe at work. So quality jobs is hugely important. And I'd also say that another barrier is a lack of a change mindset. It's easy to keep things the way they are, and the people that are keeping things the way they are benefiting from them. And so the more we disrupt or the more we call out the issues that people are facing in our community, the better we are as a community. To Lieber's point and other panelists, there are so many people that are suffering in our community, and if we really felt it, it would break our heart every day, every minute, and we become desensitized to it. And so I think we need to wake up and realize that we have a lot of power in this room, in this community, and the more we come together, we talk about that change, and recognize that it's possible to change, good things can happen. But we have a whole history and a whole lot of people that are working against us. So it's going to take us doing this together.
Our next question is transparency in decision-making, both internally and externally, is something that comes up in all of your spaces. What are your thoughts about this issue? What has worked, what has not worked, and what would you like to see next?
We don't know who has 4. Okay, go. Oh, yeah, I can talk about this one. Oh, geez. We're all right up here. So as you can imagine, government is not transparent. Even though I am a state representative, there are, in my opinion, about 5 people in that building that decide where money goes. And so I would say that this is probably a place that I have been the most annoying to those 5 people, especially when it comes around to a certain agency that's a 4-letter word in my house, probably for a lot of you, ODOT. And it has come to my attention that not a lot of Democrats are willing to hold agencies accountable for spending and where that money goes. I, on the other hand, want to know where the money is going, and we typically don't hear calls for audits from folks on my side of the aisle, if you will. And so it is something that comes up quite a bit. I think one of the interesting things about the class of legislators that I am part of is part of 21 technically new legislators that started at the same time, which they have never seen that many new people start, and they lost a lot of institutional knowledge, or as that's what they say, but I think they lost a lot of deals about keeping your mouth closed, right? The structure and the culture there was really different to my understanding around who makes those decisions, and you got a lot of new legislators who did this not because of ego and not because it's easy or it's fun, but because we're sick and tired of the status quo. And so we continue to push and continue to push to ask questions and continue to understand where money is going. Why are we continuing to burden the backs of working families? And it has, some of these conversations have been really interesting to be a part of and listen in on, almost in a way of like, sit down and wait your turn from my own colleagues. And so that transparency piece is something that no one gets to see me push. But it is absolutely something that needs to be adjusted and needs to be fixed, and there needs to be more people willing to push our leadership, even if you're in the same party, to get a better understanding. And I'm huge on trying to educate folks that were like Anessa 5 years ago. You know, I don't know how this works, I didn't know how this works, and how can we get more understanding around that, because I think an educated city and community is where change can happen, because then you really know what we're fighting for. And so I continue to try and weasel my way into these processes and try to understand those systems, but it is a long way away until we get people who have lived experience that really control the way the state spends their money. Because as I think many people know, like, we choose to fund stadiums over feeding our children, and that's not okay with me. So there's a lot there, and there's a lot of transparency that needs to happen, and I just think, I'm gonna say Democrats in particular, because they're the ones in control, have a hard time with educating folks, because that means then you'll have an opinion, and they don't want that. So we got a long way to go on that, and yeah, it hasn't worked. So.
Hi, everyone. It feels so weird, but I can't hold it. I think because I'm doing Casey Layden, she, her pronouns. I work at Clackamas Community College, as you can see. It's Cougar kickoff today. Lots of freshmen. I often get activated by the word transparency because I'm not sure what people are necessarily asking. And I'm just going to call myself out here as a leader. I don't do this very well because it sounds so good when you say it. But I think our awareness about decision points all along the way in how we make decisions or come to an end result, it feels like, you have, I'm looking at my scientists. Some of our functions happen automatically, and some we have to think about, like when it comes to your body, right? So you're unaware of them happening. You forget that you've been making decisions and you didn't actually document how or why or where you got the data from. You just kind of did it. And I'm calling myself out here. And so when I hear these types of questions, I'm like, am I that transparent? It's not easy to do but oftentimes it's not in the spirit of trying to hide, and oftentimes it is in the spirit of trying to hide. And I think what I'm working on is once someone asks me, how did I get there? I don't be like, don't worry about it. I said what I said, and I did what I did. There's a reason why they're asking, so I'm gonna be short. I'm gonna just let a short story be a short story.
You just showed transparency.
It sounds so easy, but it's actually not that easy.
And it's funny, and I'm glad that Casey brought this up because, so Casey is the DEI officer at Clackamas Community College, and her and I started within a couple of months of each other, and our past lives didn't cross, but we both came from Portland Community College. And so it's interesting some of the different experiences that we've had in overlap. But within that first couple of months of being at Clackamas, the first thing I looked at or asked was looking at the data on what students and demographic data on what students are getting into our health science programs, who's applying and who's getting in, and who's not getting in, and then why. And looking at the data and then talking to Casey, we basically looked at the application and the entire process and started just deconstructing it. Where are all of these different barriers? Where are all these different pieces? And really trying to figure out, well, why has it been like this? Well, the common response was, well, it's always been like that. This is how we've always done it at Clackamas. And it wasn't a good enough answer. And so it was interesting. We brought in the program directors. We went through this whole process of deconstructing and reconstructing and separating the difference between an application and an admissions process. Those are two separate things. They overlap, but they're different, and there's different goals behind those. And so it was a fascinating thing. And so the transparency of why and what we're going through and why we're doing it, it changed significantly how we operate, as well as how we make it very known to students how we operate. Where do we get those decisions? How are those decisions made? That is completely public. Like, you can ask. There's a whole process when it comes to the application admissions process. Everything is open. The rubrics are fully available, everything that we do. And then we do de-identify everything. All of our applications are de-identified, so there's no demographic data when the essays are read by review committees. So they can't, try to, oh, well, this person has this last name. I don't think that we're gonna score them in this way. And we tried different processes to work through. But that was like a really big deal for me, because I didn't know how or why we were getting to what we were doing. It didn't make any sense. And that's just from me being new. So it's been an interesting roller coaster. Transparency, anybody?
Yeah, I would, when I hear that question, my first thought is, when do I think something hasn't been transparent? And usually the answer to that is when I don't like the result, when I don't like the answer, then suddenly I feel like it wasn't transparent. And I think you are absolutely right, Casey, that transparency is a really tough one, because, well, like it or not, participatory democracy is not a spectator sport. You have to dig in on your own. It's on us to pay attention and to watch closely. So I guess I would just challenge that maybe sometimes it's not that it's not transparent, it's you weren't paying attention. And on that note, and in a public school setting, I'm thinking about the places where I've been really frustrated about something that wasn't transparent, and where I would really encourage you, besides voting, what else can you do? Pay attention and show up. Show up when your local school board is having a conversation about not reading that book that represents an identity of a kid that is being damaged by that conversation happening, and you're not there, and you're not saying something. Show up when your school board is talking about, which bathroom your kid can use. And no one is there talking about why that is damaging to that kid and that kid's sense of self. Or other people are, and that's my other part, and especially when there are other people there. And Libra and I have some history on this, and and the other thing you can do is support those decision makers who are doing the right thing. It's not easy. It is not easy, and frankly, it's not always safe. It's not even always safe. And so showing up and supporting those leaders is really also key.
Hear, hear. Thank you guys for your responses. I think all those responses will go really well into our next question, which is strategically undervalued communities access services at a lower rate than other communities and or have access to lower quality services than other communities. What steps have you taken to help each of your areas feel more welcome to strategically undervalued communities and be better able to engage with these populations?
So I'm going to only speak for social services here. I'll only speak for social services here, so not representing anyone else's domain, but the expectation that we facilitate spaces and then expect people to come to us to receive services is bullshit. Yeah. Very well said. It doesn't work. So that's a lot of I'll give examples. So Love One goes into communities, and we build relationships based on what those communities self-identify as needing. Where are the gaps? What is it that you need, right? Larry said something at the very beginning. How do we serve people if we don't know who's in front of us? That's what we need to be doing. Who are the people in front of us, and let them tell us what they need. That's how we ended up with showers. That's how we ended up doing more laundry. That's how we ended up with the trash program. That is how we ended up with the food pantry. That is how the Father's Heart runs as well. Yesterday morning at 7 o'clock, Glenn, our deputy director, myself, and our day center manager all received multiple calls from the police department because one of our folks who was camped outside on McLaughlin, her dog got hit and killed. She was already in mental health crisis. And so all three of us were up making arrangements. I was already approving, yes, we're gonna cremate that dog. And Glenn and Steph loaded up that dog in his car and drove to Portland. And other staff showed up in the moment and picked her up and took the owner to the day center to get a shower because she was covered in blood, right? That's not, hey, come on down to the day center, we'll get you a shower, sorry what you went through. We have to show up for people where they're at. So my actual prepared part of this was creating space and identifying, supporting folks to identify what their needs are based on the community and the needs and the culture, and involving folks, giving voice and leadership positions and hiring, right? A lot of our staff have lived experience in all of the areas that we serve, and that is so important. Because I don't have lived experience being unhoused. I don't have substance use history, right? So I can show up in some ways, but I can't show up in that same way for those people, nor do I expect that I should be able to make that happen, right? But our teams and our staff do every single day because they get it at an intrinsic level, and they can sit next to somebody and walk them through that in a way that a lot of us can't. I would also just say, asking those questions. Like, we can look at somebody on the sidewalk in a tent, say, oh, they need housing. You know what? Ask them. Maybe what they really need today is a pair of dry socks, and that's literally all that they will ask you for. That's an easy need to meet. The next day, they might say something else. Glenn and I got called out into Newell Creek Canyon when Metro started clearing camps after the COVID shutdown was lifted. And Metro had gone and engaged with someone who had built a cabin in the woods. And he said, I'm not going anywhere. Bring in the helicopters and bring in the guns, because this is my home. And so one of our Metro partners reached out and was like, hey, Glenn and Brandy, you want to go meet somebody? So we did. The first time we talked about 10 feet away, we just introduced ourselves and said, hey, it would be okay if we came back. We went out probably 30 more times building a relationship with that dude. He was fantastic. One of the last times he said, about midway through, he goes, well, what's it look like if I get housing? So that change was starting to take place, and he trusted us to have that conversation. And we said, well, let's talk more about that. He goes, well, wait. I'm not ready. I'll talk about housing if you first house my chickens. He had a full-on chicken coop built into the hillside. There was a fallen log that was the front, plexiglass front. He had one of the fattest chickens I have ever seen in my entire life. They were so happy. So we scrambled. We found someone who was like, yeah, I have a farm. I love chickens. I will take those chickens, and I will collect the eggs and take them back to him. If any of you have chickens, you know that the condition of the eggs represents how the health of that chicken is. So it was super important to him to get those eggs. So we rehomed chickens first, and that looked like a rainy, muddy, hill-sliding day. We were covered in mud, and we had cat carriers full of chickens in our vehicles. Then we housed Daniel. He's been housed for about 1.5 years. But his need was not housing when we met with him. It was feeling seen and heard and building relationships.
I think that deserves a big round of applause. And, Brandy, I watch you from afar. I think the work that you guys do is really powerful. And, it is one person at a time. And I think sometimes we forget that's the work, right? It's hard, though. It's hard. So appreciate what you guys are doing. I will also say that I think you are being strategically valuing community when you do that. And that's really the flip of it, right? Like, how do we strategically value humans in a way that they are the expert, not us? Because part of white supremacy is saying you must be this. Maybe they don't need, who said? Who said? And it's the same thing with our houseless population. We have this like knee-jerk reaction to say, I know what you need. And then we do it for every other strategically undervalued community. We tell them, you should, you should, you should, you should. How do you know? You're not me. And so with that, I want to say for us at Women's Foundation of Oregon, that is something in philanthropy I know we are doing well, and I'm excited about it. The problem is we're not a big foundation, right? Like, we don't have the dollars that some of the bigger ones have. But I also have convinced my board that if we spend it all, it's okay. They literally are like, cool, let's do it. Because at the end of the day, what are we holding the money for? You know, honestly, am I holding it to keep a job? I could, but why? I can find another job. What I can't do is keep waking up knowing that someone needs something. That's not acceptable to me. So when I think about, statistically, strategic undervalued communities' access to services at a lower rate, what can we do about that? How can we be better about it? We all need to show up for our neighbors. And sometimes our neighbors are on the street. It doesn't make them any less valuable. Most of them have a story that would knock your socks off. Most of them have overcome things that would knock your socks off. And we must respect those humans by, one, listening, two, providing space for them to speak, in spaces that have people that can respond with resources and support. And the last thing I would say to do that well is we must fight for that. In every space that we have the privilege to be in, we must fight for the undervalued human to be heard. We must do that with every cell in our body. We may not fix it in our lifetime, and I say this all the time, but if you do it well, it will happen eventually. And it's okay if you don't get to see it. It's okay. But if you fight like it will happen one day, I guarantee you it will. My favorite thing every morning when I wake up, I tell people, they're like, how do you get up and keep doing what you do? I think about a woman, I don't even know her name. It's a woman in the cotton fields that I imagine with a baby on her back picking cotton. And in her mind, with her bloody fingers, probably, you know, all types of things have happened to her physically, mentally. She's still going because she knows there's going to be a Lieber Ford one day. She's still going. For me, I don't know what that person's name is, but I know that they're going to be there. It may be one of my girls, but I promise you, I will die trying. And we all have to have that kind of fight. And it doesn't mean that you burn up the building, but it does mean that you show up at the burning building. That's the difference. We don't sit back and let it burn from our houses. We say, hey, what can I do? Can I get a bucket? What can I do? We all can do something at some point.
I was just being sensitive to time. I didn't know if you wanted us to go. But I would say that that because we are also an investor, investing and supporting community organizations, people have trusted messengers in their community. They have people and organizations, whether it be faith-based, whether it be nonprofit, whether it be public, whether it be a school, they know where they can go to help. We did a survey a few years ago with the Housing Authority and asked all of their residents, who do you go to for help? Where do you go to for help? And it was an open-ended question, and the number of people who said, I don't have anyone, I just ask God, I pray, I don't know where to go, was it was way too high. And I think that is something that is important to us as an investor, is investing directly into the community. We are not a direct service provider. I think it's an important distinction to be a convener of systems as opposed to doing the work on the ground, which is very important. And that systems level is where people get lost because it's complicated, because it doesn't make sense. If our communities looked like a library where somebody could just go and be like, I need this, and then they would get it, wouldn't that be a magical place? So manifest that with me, because that's the way our social and public services should feel, is showing up somewhere and getting exactly what you need, or knowing that somebody's going to come and ask you, do you need help right now, or is there anything I can do for you?
Can I just say one quick thing? I'm going to put my NAYA hat on for just a second, because I'm so glad Brandy talked about the chicken guy story, because that was the first time, and I met them and they shared that. And I wanted to speak a little bit to similar stories around the piece around building that trust, like having to walk in the two worlds, right? Like I live in community with serving Native people, and then I have to go to the Capitol who hates Native people. And so it's hard, right? And so I was moved by that because I had a story just from today. Some of the work that we oversee is called the home repair. So we have the healthy homes that we passed, and then we also, Portland Housing Bureau has another grant that helps us serve elders or those with disabilities stabilize their homes. And we visited an elder's house today who grew up in this house. Sorry, it's gonna be crazy. It was built in 1910, and she and her family owned this house, and she gave it to her daughter when she got older, and unfortunately her daughter passed, leaving hers to her children. Then she's like, I'll give it to your brother, and then a couple years later, he unfortunately overdosed and passed. And so over the past 5 years, as she had moved back and gained custody of her grandchildren, in this house, there was signs of hoarding, and the house is just dilapidated. I mean, who has $20,000 to fix a foundation, right? And so when our home repair coordinator first met her 3 years ago, he asked her, why did you not seek services? And she goes, well, I was afraid that child welfare would take my grandkids. And so there are so many layers of why these communities don't reach out for services that are meant to help, is because there are these horrible biases. And the work that we do in child welfare is one of those places where we just need to blow it up and rebuild it again. And it was such a shock to him, and it kind of made so much sense when he told that to me today. I'm like, well, duh, like I wouldn't either. But I had the opportunity to visit her home, and I have to navigate the grant system that a lot of nonprofits do, and there are 2 grants that fund his work, and I had mentioned before there are caps on how much we can give each individual person. He can only give one person $10,000 a fiscal year. That's like an HVAC system. That's a water heater, right? Like that, he was able to, so he navigates all the different types of funding. So he got like 5 different funding streams for this elder and fixed her roof. And then, you open up a roof, what are you gonna find? Mold. You're gonna find everything wrong. And he told me about this house. This is one of our most extreme homes. We have about 4. And we were outside, and, lawn is, a mess, and it's just her, and he's pointing out all the projects we did, and he said, now when you go inside, like if you've ever watched Hoarders, like, just be prepared. And I have watched that show, and I do understand that it is an illness that a lot of people don't recognize as an illness. And I was not prepared for walking into this house. And you can tell and you can feel the grief. And the unfortunate part of why I say that is one of those funding streams will not fix her HVAC system until she removes everything, because they can't do the blow test to see where they need to fix it. And so it has taken him 3 years to build that trust. And it's probably taken 3 years as a short amount of time because she knows NAYA, because she's an elder within community. But we shouldn't have to fucking navigate that. I'm sorry. Navigate those systems. Like, it's so frustrating. And so, like, when I hear this, like, people don't understand that this takes time. Like, it takes time, and it takes relationship building. And it's for everybody. And so it infuriates me, like being what I feel like in the problem, right? But in community, we have so many people doing amazing things, and we just need to give them the financial support. Unrestricted dollars is the key word, so that they can actually serve people without these funders or agencies saying, well, why do you need more than $10,000? Why? Can't they do it on their own? And so when we talk about, people accessing services, it's too much. It's overwhelming, and we have to be able to free that up, and I have to convince legislators that it takes time and that you're not going to see deliverables in a year. You're gonna have to wait. I'm sorry. Sorry for cussing.
All right, our next question is, the Coalition of Communities of Color just released the results of their 4-year study on strategically undervalued communities in Clackamas County. Within that report, there were 7 categories of calls to action. Please see your handouts or look to the screen above for summaries of each call to action. Panelists, can you share your initial thoughts on these calls to action? Are there calls to action that you are already working to address? Are there calls to action that stood out to you as next steps in your area?
So this question was assigned to me to start out with, but I'm sure everybody here would like to answer this, so we'll try to make mine brief so we can get through this and have time. So looking at this, there's 2 that speak to me in health sciences and education and healthcare. And when I think about healthcare, I think about health equity. I think about there's a lot to kind of unpack there. But students' desire for change. So we have students in higher education, right? So we have freshmen, senior. Community college. We have a variety of CTE programs and degree programs, and that's community education. That's what we do, community education in health sciences specifically. So when it comes to desires to change, we have, I think about the college has a Center for Teaching and Learning. And the Center for Teaching and Learning is supposed to, is there to help support faculty to, I have it in my notes when it comes to Center for Teaching and Learning and all the different things that they try to do, but basically they're trying to help faculty that are new to the college or faculty that have been at the college to really understand what culturally responsive pedagogy looks like and to try to infuse that in their work. Librarians, which I know we have one in the, there's different pieces of that context that we need to kind of integrate into our curriculum. So there's a lot of call to actions when it comes to what the students are looking for, and I'm going to not speak very clearly about this at all because we're not doing a great job, and I say that and just honestly, we're just not. There's a lot of pushback, and there's folks that don't want to do things differently. They want to keep it the same. And I know we've kind of talked a little bit about that throughout this conversation. And so it is something that is hard, and it's something that we need to do. And there's just not really an excuse not to do it at this point. So trying to have good community partners, such as one of our wonderful librarians that's in this room right now, Tori, who's a full-time faculty, Casey. It's trying to find some of those folks that are also wanting to see this change take place and to work together to make it happen, to try to make those influences. When I think about diversifying the workforce and leadership, that's a huge piece. We need a diversity in our healthcare professions in order to make sure that we can meet people where they're at, understand them a little bit more when it comes to connection and building those relationships and building those trust, right? So especially when it comes to the patient-provider relationships. I'm not going to speak anymore. I'm just rambling really quickly because I want to have time and I don't want anybody to leave. So here, next. Is that okay?
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
I think the first one that I am drawn to is the third bullet there, diversifying workforce and leadership also. And I'm thinking about, actually today, we convened a meeting that included the superintendents in Multnomah County and Clackamas County together for a regional meeting. And in that room, there were 3 black leaders in that room. And that's all there are in Oregon. That's all. There are 197 school districts in the state of Oregon, and there are 3 black leaders. That really hit me today in that room. And one of them, one of them is a male, 2 of them are female. And of course, you probably already know, one of them is the superintendent of North Clackamas School District, and another is the superintendent of Portland Public Schools. But, 10 days old. Yeah, 10 days old, right? Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah. And then, of course, I go to the last bullet there, which is the student voice. And this is just what they're telling us. And it's also remarkable to me that there's nothing new here. They've been saying this for quite a while. They've been saying it. And the responsibility of a lack of moving in that dial feels really heavy, I gotta tell you, on my shoulders. I believe very much that in order for us to ever move that dial, specifically on BIPOC teachers, and we have to make teaching look like a profession worthy of their pursuit. Right now, we're not doing that.
And
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty hard to ask you to join a system that's harmed you.
well, and
Yeah.
create conditions
Yeah.
that people can thrive in those positions,
Yes,
right? So
yes,
that's
yeah.
the one piece too that I've seen is that you can go out and recruit and
We can
hire,
recruit, but
if
can
you do
we
not have
retain?
this-
Yeah.
the space
Yeah.
and the structure.
And retention is not just on the system either. It's on the whole community. And I know from personal experience and that there are folks that come and they don't feel comfortable in the state, and so they leave. And that's something for all of us to embrace and own and really interrogate. But that last one, that's kids saying, this is what I need. This is what I need to feel like I belong here. And that's a big order.
I mean, to that point, every single one of these calls to action influences people's ability to work and learn in our community. And so we know that if we don't have a robust and supported mental health and behavioral health system, we know people are going to slip through the cracks. If we don't have good jobs and people in leadership positions that are representative of our community, we know we're going to lose people. In order for Clackamas and the state of Oregon to move forward into the future, we're going to need to think differently. All of these speak to me. The ones that really stand out is, of course, diversifying the workforce and leadership, ensuring that materials are available in multiple languages. That's something that is important to us. What often gets in the way of that is cost. To translate, to interpret, to bring in those services, that costs money, and we need resources to be able to do that. But it remains hugely important, even to have like ASL interpreters and have that available. If people can't understand what's going on in a community event, or to be able to speak like what their needs are, we're not going to know it, and then we continue to keep doing the status quo. And then I would say also supporting community-based organizations, because we know our CBOs and nonprofits know their communities, and I think the same would be true for our education partners. You know the people that you're serving. I think as funders and leaders, we need to give as much of that money away and step back and let you do the work. But all of this is our call to action, and our plan is to incorporate it in everything from all of our strategic plan goals and our advisory goals, and just take it everywhere, because it is now our plan. This report, this study, belongs to all of us, and I want to take that and say, like, share this work with me.
Love that. I just want to go back to a point that Larry brought up about the representation. Statistically, when you have such a few number, they actually don't usually answer surveys. I just want you to know that. And I know that in particular because of one superintendent, who at the time was the only. And so she did not feel safe enough to answer a survey which gave feedback to the state on things that were needed. And her voice was just lost. And rightfully so, right? She wanted to protect herself, and she should have. So it's nice to have 3. I think statistically, that's still not enough. But, you know, we're moving in the right direction. But I agree, all of these really stand out to me. I actually am 2 doors away from communities of color, so I have the luxury of talking to them often. The one that sticks out to me most is supporting community-based organizations, which we call CBOs. Some of you know I came from a CBO, and Multnomah County, which was brought up early, has a robust relationship with CBOs, where if you were following my campaign, Clackamas does not. And I think the reason why this sticks out to me so much is because I do think that there's a lot of success with having a robust partnership with government and CBOs, because that's where the trust lies. I would love to see this particular bullet really strategically be operationalized with a concept that I like to call the triangulation. I think that CBOs partners with government is a process that should happen, and I think foundation should be the 3rd prong. We know that when CBOs are funded by counties and states, they're not funded enough, and the dollars are restricted. Foundation should be a part of that triangulation to fill the gap, so that if you give me $1, I'm not having to fundraise 27 cents because it cost me $1.27. That foundation is in that process from the beginning, and we know we're gonna give you 50 cents so you don't have to struggle, you can pay your people what you need, and we move on. So I think there's a lot of value in this bullet because there is a county doing it better, and we could take what they've done and include new things and do it even better. And because we're not robust, it's an opportunity, right? And I come from operations where it's better when there's nothing because you get to build it. Doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect, but you look at everything around you, you look at the best practices, and you create something better. And so I really love this bullet, and I would love to see Clackamas County dig into that partnership as a triangulation. I think we could win if we did that.
Libra Ford for Clackamas County Chair. Anybody? 4 years. I couldn't agree more with everything that everybody said up here. I just have to highlight one that will always stick out to me. I had the privilege of being a part of the Adult Steering Committee for this particular report. Myself and Trish Jordan, who runs the Red Lodge, were sort of tasked with the Indigenous perspective. And so all of these, yes, absolutely support. The histories piece is very near and dear to my heart, and I think it's because those of you who followed my journey into this world from Gladstone will know a little story about a powwow tree that Gladstone used to have as their logo since inception, I believe. And I remember speaking to a historian at Grand Ron and said, hey, like, tell me more about this powwow tree. It's in Gladstone. It still has its, historical marker. And I said, they say this is where trade happened. Like, this is where they came to meet. And he goes, well, that's just because they cut all the other damn trees down and built houses over them. And it was the first time I had ever heard that, right? And they obviously didn't do their due diligence and reach out to the tribes or to any of those who have ancestral lands there. And so, that you just keep digging and digging and digging. And Clackamas County, from Willamette Falls to Mount Hood, has such a rich Native culture and history that you just don't find anywhere. Mount Hood is a sacred place to the people from here. The Falls is a ceremonial place to people here, and it's covered by these big buildings. It's going to get cleaned up soon. But it's just fascinating to me, the lack of uplifting different perspectives. Right, right. And the little bridge that connects Oregon City to Gladstone was built by Chinese laborers. No recognition whatsoever. And so I can't wait for that moment. I think we're doing little things here and there. Oregon City has done a few things, but there's so much opportunity to rewrite history, to tell the actual history. And some schools are doing it. You know, we've required that they teach real history. I'm sad that that had to be a legislation that we had to tell them to do that. And some schools are following that, and some schools are a little behind, sort of just checking the box. But then the ones that are doing that, it's so amazing. Like my daughter, you know, goes to her school, she sees a mural, and she's like, that does not look like my people. Like, I don't know about that. And she didn't say that, but she did not like it. She herself, as a young 11-year-old, commissioned to hire an artist from Warm Springs to repaint the wall. And the school was all about it, but I know there's so many schools that don't give a crap about that kind of thing and don't see the importance of seeing yourself on a wall. And so it's just, I think that one always will rise to the top for me because we do have a really long way to go that's not performative, that is true and centered around the stories of those cultures and people that we're trying to uplift. And I really look forward to investing and finding ways to fund these projects just across this huge county because I think it's a beautiful thing to learn about other people's cultures, and we haven't done that very well.
Thank you so much, panelists, for your thoughts tonight. We have about 10 minutes left, so we'd love to turn to the audience if everyone has any questions they would like to pose to the panel. We'll probably have time for about 2 to 3 questions, and we can pass the mics out to y'all. Thank you. Would anyone like to ask a question to our panelists? If not, we have a final question for them. Sorry.
You might have to hear me verbally process to get to the question first. Sorry about that. I'm seeing this panel and a room full of really invested folks. I know there's some other like powerhouse decision makers, leaders, people leading from all different kinds of spaces just right here in this room. And Libra, you were saying, you know, disrupt a space. How often do you all work together? Or like, I know some of you, like it's your job to work with some of the people in the audience here, but like, how often are you all connecting? Or this is my idea of like thinking like, why aren't we doing this more so we can get connected? Because we each know little pieces of things and how to help each other. But I don't know if that's actually a question, but like, how can we do this more? What are your ideas or thoughts about how we can connect more often to start to fill in the gaps and deconstruct so we make that dream library that Bridget talked about? Sorry. Oh, sure.
I appreciate that question because I do think I have a couple thoughts. One, I think that we need to be more intentional about working together. I don't think there's enough of that. I will be honest, losing an election is really eye-opening. People dump you. And so I do think that my answer would be the same way you support the people that won, you need to support the people that didn't. Because 81,000 people said yes to me, even though I didn't win, and there's power in that. And so dumping a person that doesn't win doesn't give you that power with the person that won. And so in my answer to you would be, we need to gather the ones that have decided they wanted to be leaders and maybe didn't get to that goal and use their power. And I think that would also give us more power.
Our organization is mandated by law to convene. And so how we convene, who we convene matters. And our board is a microcosm of the county. It's 50% plus one private sector. It's trade and labor. It's public entities and government. It's education. It's nonprofits. And that's not all. Like we know that, I mean, I know everyone up here because we're either investing in their work or we're partnering actively to like pull people together. In fact, this next month I'm pulling together nonprofit executive directors from around the county to say, hey, we just need to support each other. Let's start there. Let's see what we can do together. Let's move forward. But it's taking those times and convening. So I committed to continuing to push our envelope and saying who sits at the table when we're making decisions can't just be 50% plus one private sector and what's mandated by the county or by the federal government. It needs to be all of our community saying, this is important to us. This is why we needed to change. This is why we need to break down these silos that serve people, because one person shouldn't have to go to 6 different organizations to get what they need and tell their story 6 different times in 6 different data systems where it all doesn't get wrapped together. And so in order to break down those systems, we have to come together and be together. So I love the idea of coming together more often, and I'm committed to setting as many tables as we can.
I get the privilege to have almost every one of these people in my district with community college, with Clackamas Workforce Partners, and Love One, Father's Heart. Libra, we got to get you in House District 40. I saw living room youth here. We do have really amazing people in Clackamas County. And I remember from this study that was the kind of common theme was like, how do we find community in like a humongous county? But I think what's unique about the way Daniel and I have approached this work that is unlike we've seen in other offices is I love our elected officials, right? Like they are the leaders, the mayors, the city councilors. I was one of those people. But we prioritize these people in our policy making decisions and listen to them because they're the ones doing the work. And so if I have a bill that's coming, and I've called like Bridget before, and it's like, what is this? What is this? The amount of times I've heard from Bridget and Love One and Father's Heart that systems aren't talking, and then I go and bring that, and they're like, oh, I didn't know that. And so like that's the way we approach this work is because we love our elected officials, but they're not always on the ground doing the work. And so it's important to our office that we center the people that are on this stage.
So last winter, I got a text from Anessa. We were in the throes of, I think it was like week 7 or 8 of around-the-clock shelter work, and we had staff dropping like flies and participants, literally climbing the walls. And she said, hey, my kids and I want to support you all. How are you doing? What do you need? And I was like, we have donations coming out our ears, but you know what? Our staff could really use some encouragement. So Anessa showed up with hot chocolate, coffee, and a whole basket of goodies and snacks that her kids had helped put together, and little handwritten cards that I still have on my wall of just like, hey, you're doing great, hang in there, keep it up. And then she just sat there with us and provided a safe space to just hang out and take a break for a few minutes. And that's the kind of connection I think that several of us have, but especially with Anessa, so that's worth mentioning.
So I'm going to tell a kind of a secret that Women's Foundation is working on, which some people know, not everyone. How many in the room are aware of the Age-Friendly Distinction Program by AARP? Something to Google tonight, cool. It is a program where they have designed 8 livability factors that determine that a city is age-friendly. And people over 65 can use this index to determine if it's a place they can live. 1-story homes, all the things. I have been working with them for a while, and I asked if we can expand it. And so Women's Foundation of Oregon is going to be doing the first convening of social services, justice-focused organizations. We'll make sure you guys are all invited. In Sisters, Oregon, we're paying for everyone to come. And we're going to develop a justice-friendly distinction program for the state of Oregon. We've been working really hard on this for 2 years, and we have a process, but we want organizations to come together and dream. Dream about what a justice-friendly city looks like. What are those livability factors that we want to see? How do we want to see funding spent? How do we want to be that we're not today? And we want the voices of our social service organizations to be a part of that. So we'll be convening 80 in June. Hold me to it, but I'll invite you guys to make sure that we begin this conversation and create that program. So stay tuned.
Taking a term out of what Libra just used today, and I'm sure a lot of you all here am extremely rattled on what's happened at the Clackamas County Commission and their dismantling, defunding of the Equity and Inclusion Office. I'm just curious, how has that defunding, dismantling affected the work that you all do? Just what are your general thoughts? And also, apart from voting, what thoughts or recommendations do you have for all of us here on how we can get that work built again?
I'm going to start. I vote in November because we could have a completely different commission, and then as soon as we have a new commission in January of 25, we demand an equity and inclusion office be reinstated, and I believe that's 100% possible. Last month, I was presenting our strategic plan and budget to the Board of County Commissioners, as we are required to do. And it was a 30-minute presentation. And when we got to the Q&A, Commissioner Ben West says, we have a 100-page strategic plan. There's good work that's happening. The only thing he was focused on was our mission. And he's like, I see that you have diversity, equity, and inclusion in here, and they are divesting in DEI across the country. I want to know why you still stand by this. Why is this organization still committed to keeping this in there? And I was like, I don't see there being anything wrong with serving DEI. It is not mutually exclusive to the business's bottom line. 3 of the commissioners were like, we support that comment of DEI. So 1, we need to get them out of office because they don't deserve to be there. And the other side is, they're elected, it's short term, they're temporary, we're not. And so it's not backing off of that. It's saying, we're not just committed to DEI, we're committed to belonging, we're committed to justice, we're committed to making the world a better place, one person at a time. And so it was a huge loss, and we miss the Equity and Inclusion Office. It's not right, but it's temporary.
I just was going to say what she said.
I have a story that's been, really wanting to come out this evening, and that is, I run the free clinic, right? And at one of our events, my wife, who's a person of color, and I were talking to one of the commissioners, who will go unnamed, but is the only Democrat, I think, on the commission. And my wife was saying how upsetting it was to watch the commission meetings. And I thought of this story when Larry was saying democracy is not a spectator sport. And this commissioner said very compassionately, "Oh, just don't watch the meetings." And I thought, oh my God. That's my story.
Martha, I'm glad you said that, because the word I wanted to talk about was transparency. I totally agree with everything you said. The only thing I would add is, don't forget there is strategy. That didn't happen accidentally. That was planned. That was carefully planned. That was carefully orchestrated. And we cannot forget that.
And there were other people involved that weren't. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So to counter it, Yeah, so to counter it, you need to be equally strategic and planful. Yeah.
And show up.
And show up. That's kind of the answer.
This is not planned, so we'll see how much I ramble. I think I want to speak to the reality that the reason why we are all here is because there are equity-minded community groups that come together in various levels of functioning and throughout our community. And we have a few people who will come together out of those groups to be the Clackamas County Equity Coalition. And so I think I want to remind all of us that we also have just us plain folk that are trying to do the good work. And I think it's important for all of us to keep reinforcing that, because I think it's the doing the work in spite of whether or not there's a DEI office at Clackamas, you know, at the county level, or whether or not all of the wonderful work you all are doing, thank you very much. But it still is important for us as individuals, seeing each other as the individuals that we are, bringing together our energy and strength, because that will actually make the movement happen.
I'm gonna do. Hello. You're done. I know. They're just. I know, right? They're like. Turn this off. You're done. No, it's. Okay, I got it. You just needed to be close. I need to be very careful about how like political I get when it comes to campaigning. So I want to be very clear. I'm not talking about myself. Okay. Coming from someone who was not a habitual voter or a low propensity voter is what people call it. I think we need to be strategic about planning for 4 years from now, or 2 years from now, 4 years from now. And, you know, I can't believe I'm saying this because I still I wake up and I'm like, oh, you're really a politician. It's weird. But we have this environmental scan. We have this Coalition of Communities of Color report that nobody realized where these clusters of communities are up in Mount Hood, like here in Lake Oswego, you have out in Sandy. We have people who benefit from voices that support and uplift equity, inclusion, and diversity. And those people are not talked to when it comes to voting and turning out the vote and telling them that their vote matters and that they actually could be the change in this county. And being in this system now, it's weird to sit up here and be like, that's all that it takes. We know that that's not all that it takes, but we also know that the damage it can do when we don't have people that are in those positions, and we're seeing that right now. And I think that that's like where my heart goes, is like, how are we strategically planning? Because this costs money. And the other people that win these races have Uncle Phil Knight funding these positions to get them in places of power so that he can make more money, or however it works. And that's hard. So how we win is we win with people power. And we need to take it upon ourselves to go out and educate some of these communities and just inform, maybe not educate, but inform the power of the collective us. Because we can win these races. Like, Libra Ford should have won her race. Absolutely. And I think that's ultimately where my heart is, because I have watched my city, Gladstone, flip to being a progressive city. And it has, yes, we have City Councilor Vanessa Huckabee up here. I have watched Oregon City get to a place where it's changing. And we're slowly watching that, and then we watch what happens at the county level. And I'll tell you, becoming a legislator, that's ultimately where a lot of power is. I can pass all the shit I want and fund and do all of these things, but if they don't actually do the programs, then it's all for nothing. And so I know voting is not always the only answer, but that's how we have to work together, is we have to get out and knock doors, and we have to get out and support people that are like-minded, because that's how we are really going to make change, if we get people to the top. And then I'm going to stop rambling.
And then call it a voting extravaganza.
A voting extravaganza.
I think just like building off of this a little bit, as a student at Lake Ridge High School, I know there's a lot of seniors, I'm a senior this year, who are trying to register to vote, and I'm planning a voting registration with our Black Student Union, so if anyone would love to come to our school, and please talk to me after this, because I would love to have, because there's not a lot of education we know about the presidential election, but we don't know a lot about these, the smaller local elections. So if anyone would love to come speak, please talk to me after, because I'm trying to plan our voting registration. So that's a little shameless plug here, but.
I hear some funding from like that dream that you have.
It has some visioning. In addition to the voting, it's also making sure people are aware of collective bargaining rights and their labor rights. Workers' rights have over the last several decades been slowly like chipped away at. We have a generation right now with our Gen Z that are like, we don't care. Like, this makes sense to us, and I think they're thinking about labor negotiations and collective bargaining differently. I think that's another side of this. So it's voting, and it's also holding employers accountable for living wages, benefits, and supports that actually create a livable community.
So I saw that you were looking directly at me, and I appreciate that. So in front of everyone, I commit not only to supporting you with funds, but if you help us build a bigger network of students like your club across other places that may be interested, then we'll provide not only resources, but also the education. So let's make that happen.
Thank you so much.
Hi there. Okay, thank you. So I am an elected official. I know there was at least one more here. I'm disheartened that we don't see more. My question is, what can we do? How can we show up for you? City level, not county.
I think that I think it's important that we have a connection, and I'm going to speak for foundations, where you can call us and tell us where your pain points are in a safe space, and let us do what we can do that you can't do. I don't think that enough elected officials use us in that way. I've reached out to several and said, hey, I'm here, tell me where I need to scream, because I can. Right? And I got money behind it. So I say that needs to be more strategic, and just say, hey, let me give Libra a call. She can activate women. She can have them show up. It doesn't ever have to come back to you. We just need to know what we're showing up for, and then we can educate and show up, right? But that strategically, historically, that's how we've won. By people, I don't want to say secretly, but intentionally finding the group that can do the work that you can't do in your seat. And we have to do that better, but you guys have to find us, right? Because we don't know what that is, because you guys are tight-lipped for right reasons, right? But you're tight-lipped and we don't know. But, and I'm speaking for myself, I will show up and I will tell people off, because I can. But if I don't know what you need, then I can't show up. So please let us know.
I would love to come and present to the City Council. I was just presenting to the City Council of Milwaukee on childcare, and then also about employment services and workforce services back in June. And it's some of it is just not knowing. I mean, as electeds, most work part-time. You have full-time jobs, you have busy lives. You just might not know all of the functions and know as much as all of us know because of just where we sit and the work that we're doing. So invite us in and to present and share about what's happening and what's going on. And also thank you for funding some of our clean slate work and expungement clinics because what's getting in people's way is sometimes something that doesn't cost that much for us to solve for. It just takes us to think creatively of to solve it.
I think that's what we've got for questions, but I'd just like to, again, thank our panelists, thank our moderators. Can we get a round of applause, please? So before we go off into the night, oh, can we go back to the last slide?
Oh, sorry.
I just want to point people, there's a QR code on the screen. You know, if you're watching this online, it'll be on there as well. But for this Coalition of Communities of Color survey, there is a follow-up mobilization survey that they are encouraging people to take, help continue informing this work. So again, you can scan the QR code on the screen. Okay, yeah, now next slide. And yeah, again, just want to thank you all for being here tonight. Again, this is the fall quarterly meeting for the Clackamas County Equity Coalition. You can see some of the various groups that make up the coalition on the screen. And as we've all talked about tonight, we're going to continue to build on this work meaningfully and intentionally. So thank you all again and have a good evening.